your phone, your security alarm might be being used against somebody else. But a lot of people don't think about the fact that if somebody enters into that system, then they can relatively easily move into your network. Then you're open to attack, a relatively easy attack from that device.
Hey everybody, it's Yaniv Hoffman with a special guest. Welcome, Master, Occupy the Web.
Thank you, Yaniv. It's always an honor to be asked to appear on your show. Thank you very much.
And we just started 2025 and recently released a video on the hackers roadmap. If you didn't see it, I will leave the link in the description and also on the screen. But today we wanted to talk about the big threats ahead of us this year. Who is better to hear about it other than OTW himself?
Thank you, Yaniv. I'm not sure that I can predict the future any better than anybody else, but I can tell you what we are seeing, right? And it's likely what we're seeing to continue into 2025. So let's talk about some of these things. Some of these things are, they're kind of old stuff, that we're seeing around for a while. But probably one of the most important things that we're seeing right now is ransomware. I think we all have to be aware that that is one of the biggest threats to large organizations going out there right now. It's less a threat to individuals than it used to be. It's a strategy that started by attacking individuals and charging them $200 or $300 to get their family pictures back. Now it's not unusual to see ransoms of $5 and $50 million from large organizations who they're in the business of making money. So if somebody encrypts all their data, it's costing them every minute that they're down. It's costing them in some cases millions of dollars. So they make really good targets for ransomware because these people will pay the ransom. And because there's so much money to be made in ransomware, we're really talking about a lot of money. We're talking about billions of dollars every year being paid in ransoms. That feeds the ransomware industry. So if they are successful and they take down a $5 or $50 million ransom, that helps fuel their business, and they come up with new and better ransomware. And so those people who are paying the ransoms, keep that in mind, that you are fueling that industry.
Yeah.
It's also from the perspective of potential targets. There's a lot of things that you can do to protect yourself from cyber attacks, and we could talk about those, and we have in the past. But for ransomware, probably the most important thing that anybody can do is simply back up your data, right? Back up your data. If you back up your data on a regular basis, then, if ransomware hits, and we hope it doesn't, right, then you can just go and restore all your data. You might lose a day's data or a week's worth of data, but that's far better than losing all of your data and not be able to stay in business or trying to recreate data, which can cost an organization millions of dollars, right? And so sometimes you'll see organizations, they'll do the cost-benefit analysis, right? It's going to cost me $50 million to rebuild my database, right? Or I can pay these guys $5 million. Well, okay, pay them $5 million, all right? So that's the kind of thinking that's going in to organizations paying the ransoms, and that is what is fueling the ransomware industry. Let's call it that. It's an industry. There are a lot of elements involved in this. And as long as they're making money, we're going to continue to see the growth of that industry. So back up your data. If you can back it up every day, all the better, right? And if you back it up once a week, that means you're most at risk of a week's worth of data. So you back it up every Saturday and make sure that the backup actually works. I mean, I've gone into a lot of organizations and they've got backups and then they kind of restore from the backups, and the restoration doesn't work, right? So that's part of just being prepared, business continuity type of activities and make sure that you can recover from an attack. And backups become the key element to being able to make certain that you can recover from a ransomware attack. And all of us are all vulnerable to ransomware attacks, right? Okay, so that's probably number one in my book right now. That's not anything new. It's just going to continue into 2025.
Maybe to add 2 points. One, it's not a question of if you will be ransomware. Probably you will. So it's only a question of when. And second, you touched the point of refueling the ransomware attacks. I fully agree, and I see even if you pay, it doesn't give you immunity, right? They can sell it to a different group that will come after you later on.
Exactly.
So
right.
Definitely do not pay.
And sometimes you'll pay and they still won't release your data. So those are all the possibilities. But if you have your backups and they are workable, then you can minimize the impact. And it seems so simple, right? Do your backups, all right?
Right.
And make sure that the backups are actually work and can be restored. Okay. So that's one thing that's going to continue in 2025. It probably will get larger because it's growing every year, and it's growing because there is that fuel, the money going into the industry, right? So you gotta think about these things like an industry, right? So these organizations, and let's call them that. They're organizations, they're corporations, and sometimes they're simply software as a service, right? They will sell ransomware for a piece of what you make on it, or they'll let you rent it. They'll just take a commission on what you earn. So they're pretty complex organizations and pretty sophisticated, and that's going to likely, I would be surprised if it did not continue into 2025. Okay, so we've also have some interesting things going on right now. This is January 1, okay, 2025. Of course, you are January 2nd, so you are in the future, as usual. But I'm on January 1, okay? And as of at this point in time, there is a threat that is very real and alive in the U.S. in that there's a group of state-sponsored hackers who have found their way into the U.S. telecom system. Right? These are likely Chinese hackers, right? And as such, they're able to see all the messages, listen to messages that are going across the U.S. telecom system. And as most of your listeners probably are aware of, is that there's this long-standing, very old vulnerability in the mobile system, which is called SS7, right? And so SS7 is a way that all these telecom systems connect, right? And it's vulnerable to relative easy attack, given that you have a telecom operator, okay, attached to the network. So if you have a license, okay, or you can set up a telecom provider, all right, that looks legitimate, then you can connect to the SS7, right, or take advantage of the SS7 vulnerability. And so that's what the Chinese are doing. Of course, the Chinese have their own phone system, so their state-sponsored actors can set up their own telecom company. And then when they do that, they can then take advantage of the SS7 vulnerabilities. I get people asking me all the time about the SS7 vulnerability, and it's not as simple as some would make it seem, all right? But if you have an agent set up on the network, all right, you have a network node in the telecom system, then you can take advantage of this vulnerability. If you don't, it's very, very difficult to do otherwise, right? But remember that the state-sponsored actors can set up their own telecom companies, right, and then take advantage of it. So we're seeing this happening right now, okay, as we speak. And the U.S. intelligence agencies and law enforcement are trying to get the Chinese out there. First of all, have to find them, and they're trying to get them out. But this kind of highlights the risks of the mobile telephone system, right?
Mhm.
The mobile telephone system, we've all become so dependent upon the mobile telephone system. We're using it for our internet access. We're using it for our phone conversations and our text messages. But it has a lot of vulnerabilities, right? It has a lot of vulnerabilities. And this just highlights those vulnerabilities. And I expect more to come about in 2025, because one of the things we all know about Pegasus and some of the other malware that can exploit the handset, but we seldom talk about the ways to exploit the system. And that's one of the things that we're doing here at Hackers Rise, is that we have a new class basically on exploitation of the system, right? And this can be used for people who want to go into telecom industry, what have you. But we are seeing this right now, and I think it highlights one of these key elements that people have been overlooking, and that is the cellular system exploitation. If you can put yourself inside the system, then you can see all the traffic. You can see, even if people encrypt their data, which the FBI has been recommending in the US, if you encrypt your data, the header, the metadata, okay, from the messages is still available to the attacker. Metadata is going to include things like phone numbers, right? Your location data. All of that is still going to be unencrypted and be available to the attacker. So that's one that I think is not on the radar right now, and I think I'll make a prediction that we're going to see more of it in 2025. Moving on, of course, you're never going to talk to me about coming threats and not have me talk about SCADA ICS. SCADA ICS is we began to really see it in the last couple of years as it's become more and more important. We're seeing attacks against various adversaries, against their infrastructure, things like water system, electrical system, mobile phone systems, right? Satellite is part of the SCADA system as well, because it's often the backbone of a network, a communication network. Right? We've seen those types of attacks, but they can be really devastating when SCADA attacks hit an industrial facility, an important industrial facility, like, say, a pharmaceutical plant, an automobile plant, an oil refinery, an electrical grid. All of these things, right, can be attacked through SCADA. And most people who are in our industry don't really understand SCADA attacks and defenses, right? As a matter of fact, a lot of tools that you use for defense, again, in your traditional TCP/IP networks don't even work in the SCADA network, because SCADA networks use different protocols. So I think this is going to be a year where we're going to see more of that. I think that's a pretty safe prediction because we're going to see more of it every year. Every year is worse than last year. And so we're going to see more of it. And we've seen, obviously, it enter the realm of cyber war in the attacks between Russia and Ukraine, two relatively sophisticated cyber war entities, and they have both attacked each other's SCADA systems, right? So I think we're going to continue to see that happening in the future, right? The other thing that I'm going to make a bold prediction. Here's a bold prediction. My bold prediction is we're going to see a massive DDoS attack in 2025, right?
Good.
We're going to see a massive one. We're going to see one that's going to knock our socks off. It's going to be the biggest in history. That's my prediction, okay? And there's a lot of things that we see out there that are indications of this. And one of the indications is that there's this huge growth of IoT devices, right? The Internet of Things devices. And those devices can be used in a botnet, okay, to do DDoS attacks, right? And so one of the things that we're seeing these systems, these small Linux systems inside these IoT devices being compromised because nobody's putting good security measures into them, or at least the developers are not putting good security measures into them. Things like cameras and microphones and all the devices that people are finding in their homes in the first world. I mean, refrigerators now are connected to the internet. Some people's are. Mine's not. But some people's refrigerators are connected to the internet. And in each of these is a small chip and a small operating system that can be compromised. And they are being compromised. But we're not seeing the massive DDoS attacks. So we have millions and maybe billions of these devices that are compromised, and nothing's happened yet. Right? So one of the most common pieces of malware that we're seeing out there is the Mirai botnet. Remember the old Mirai botnet, right? It's floating around and being used in various permutations. So people are changing it a little bit, adding new features to it, right? And sending it out there, and we're finding it in millions of devices, right? And so at some point, those devices are going to be used, and that could be really, really scary. So I will make a bold prediction and say we're going to see the largest DDoS attack in history in 2025. Right?
First of all, I fully agree. I think what else is fueling it is the geopolitical situation in the world, right? Nation state in a state of war in many places around the world. There are many proxies that are using these techniques and type of attacks also to humiliate the other side, to cause reputation damages and show that they can, and availability and services to plant fear, right, and chaos. So this is one. Second, the use of more applications in today's world also push DDoS into the layer 7 side. So it's not only the bandwidth now, it's how you take the application server down themselves.
So when they go into layer 7, right? When they go into layer 7, they can get the server to basically do a lot of work that is not useful work. And so by using up all of that, not bandwidth, but CPU cycles, right? And using up all the CPU cycles, so the server can't do anything else but address the requests coming in from the layer 7 attack, right? And so that's something that's different. I mean, the old DDoS attack was against just using up all the bandwidth, and that's still possible, right? And that's a relatively simple attack that can be done with very simple devices and very simple people. But the layer 7 attacks are a little bit more sophisticated, and they can be even more damaging because the server doesn't have the capacity to handle that load, right? Unlike in the old attacks where all the bandwidth going to the server was taken up. Here we're taking up all the CPU cycles of the system.
And you said it very rightfully. We have billions of IoT devices that can be slaved to be used as army of attackers distributed around the world, which is more even challenging to mitigate. And you mentioned also Mirai, which was aiming for DNS services, right? So Mirai took the DNS service, while when the DNS service is down, it doesn't matter what protection organizations have, because nobody can reach them.
Right. So if DNS is down, nobody's going to be able to reach the website because there's no translation going on.
And it connects also to the point you mentioned about this allegedly, the Chinese state nations hackers that are attacking the telecom industry in the US. And majority of the attacks now are on the telecom industry. And maybe they provide majority of the protection into the industry, so taking them down is exposing the industry, many enterprises themselves, Definitely all the data is passing through them. So it's data is gold. So it's a very lucrative target, DNS, and many other things. So it's all connected in some way.
I agree 100% on that. So let's move on to the next attack that I expect to see more of in the coming year. And this one is going to be a little bit controversial, but I'll say it anyways. And that is attacks against VPNs. Right. So we saw in the last couple of years that there's been some significant vulnerabilities in the VPN software that many of these companies are putting out. And I'm not going to name any names, but they're the leading companies in the field. And these VPNs are so easy to attack and so easy to be able to, in the case of the VPN that was attacked in the Viasat, the satellite attack in 2022 in Ukraine. So you may remember that Ukraine had their satellite internet knocked out at the very first day of the war. And the way that the Russians did that was simply by attacking the VPN, and the credentials of the VPN are stored inside of a directory in the VPN. And so all they had to do was just go through and do a directory traversal attack. And the sad news is that that's not just limited to that particular brand. That was a Fortinet. And there's many other vulnerabilities. And if people are interested in some of the vulnerabilities, we've got a article on Hackers Rise on some of the major vulnerabilities that have been found in these VPNs. And the reason that this is so malicious is that people are depending upon their VPN and thinking their VPN is going to keep them safe, right? So they're communicating confidential data and information through their VPN. And if somebody's inside the VPN, right? If they're inside the VPN, they're seeing everything, right? So remember that the data gets encrypted at the client, then gets decrypted at the VPN. So if an actor is inside the VPN, they can see all the decrypted data before it passes to the local area network. So they can see all the encrypted messages. I'm recommending to people to think twice about your VPNs as a security device that you can count on, right? We've been taught, by the VPN companies and others that these things are safe. They're going to keep our data safe. Well, we found out very clearly that that's not the case. And this is not something that's just happened this year. This is a problem that's been going on for at least a decade and a half, that the VPNs have been full of vulnerabilities. And so I can remember hacking VPNs 2010, with some pretty simple attacks, right? And so these attacks that are getting inside of the VPNs now are a little more sophisticated, but not much. They're pretty simple attacks, right? A directory traversal attack is like web app hacking 101, and that's what is getting them inside these systems, and that is unacceptable. So VPNs are really a serious problem, okay? Mostly because people think that their information is safe and secure in there, and so they will transmit data, confidential data, what have you, over their VPN, thinking that it's safe, and I can assure you it's not safe.
What's the alternative for people that, many people are indeed using a VPN, I agree. So what's the alternative to use in such case? What you recommend?
I'm not going to make any recommendations here. What I mostly want to do is I want to alert people to this problem, right? And there's the problem, I think, is partly that people believe that this data source or this data transmission is safe. So I guess my primary message is don't believe that. Right? If you've got highly confidential data, your VPN may not keep it safe. Right? So look for other alternatives. I mean, for instance, obviously one could use Tor, but Tor has its problems too. Right? So, but I think that Tor is safer, okay, than a VPN. But there's all kinds of problems with Tor in terms of speed and what have you.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I'm not necessarily saying that's the best solution, but it is a solution. And I mostly want to alert people in the industry that VPNs are not necessarily safe and secure. Now, if we want to do a video in the future on VPNs and VPN hacking, I'd be happy to do that. And then we can talk about maybe some other alternatives as well. But it's mostly my message is don't believe that everything you're sending over a VPN is safe and secure. We've seen the story for 15 years at least, and we'll probably continue to see the story into 2025. So another prediction. Okay, then, and this is probably, it's maybe an overlooked area. And of course, there's this whole field of IoT, and we talked about that being used in terms of DDoS attacks, and most people don't really worry about DDoS attacks against somebody else. They don't worry about DDoS attacks until it's against them. But your phone or your security alarm might be being used against to attack somebody else. But a lot of people don't think about the fact that if your security device, so your cameras or your security system, if somebody enters into that system, right, then they can relatively easily move into your network. Right? So if that device is on your Wi-Fi network or your Bluetooth network, then you're open to attack, a relatively easy attack from that device. So you go out and you buy a security camera and you pay $50 for it at Amazon or wherever you buy it from. Right. And it comes out of China, almost undoubtedly. Almost all of them are made in China, especially all the cheap ones are. Right. And you put that onto your home network and connect it to your Wi-Fi. Right. And that device isn't properly secured. Right. Somebody, somewhere, can attack that device, get inside of it. Right. Take control of it. And then once they've taken control of that, if it's connected to your Wi-Fi network, because that's what you had to do to make it work, right? Or your Bluetooth network or your Zigbee network, depending upon the different types of cameras and devices. So those are the primary methods that are used for IoT devices. The primary protocol, Zigbee, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And if they are able to take over that device, then your entire local area network, whether you're corporate or home, can be compromised relatively easily. We're still seeing IoT devices being shipped with default credentials in them, right? So they're still going into homes, they're still going into businesses with default credentials, which means that it becomes child's play to compromise them, right? I mean, it becomes way too simple. So I think this is something that hopefully we see more awareness of in 2025 as this becomes more and more important. One of the studies that was done recently by researchers from Checkpoint and SciFlow and a couple others. Okay, they were able to hack the Bluetooth of the EV charging stations. Right? Mm-hmm. So the EV charging stations can be administered, managed by Bluetooth. So you can connect to them if you're a customer or what have you, or you're an administrator, and you can go ahead and connect to it, and then that becomes your interface into the EV charging station. Well, the Bluetooth isn't adequately secured so that somebody else coming nearby, of course, Bluetooth only has a distance of about 100 meters, right, at max. It's supposed to be a piconet with about 10 meters, but in some of these devices you can pick up for 100 meters or more, especially when you have very sensitive devices. And so you can send commands into these EV charging stations through the Bluetooth. This is something that's really underappreciated. We're using more and more Bluetooth in these IoT devices. An EV charging station qualifies as an IoT device. It's not simple, it's not cheap, but it's the Internet of Things that now has new vulnerabilities that we haven't even considered yet, right? And so this is one of our concerns, is that Bluetooth is being used on all these not many. I haven't said all, but I meant many of these devices. And the Bluetooth is hackable. And the Bluetooth is hackable. Both the devices and the protocol are insecure, right? Okay, and then one of the things that I'm going to make another bold prediction for 2025, and that is that we will see more satellite hacking. We are going to see satellites being hacked for cyber war purposes. I don't know that we're going to see them as like a DDoS attack, but that's not out of the question that somebody could hack a satellite and DOS it, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, the Russians did something similar in that what they did is that they took control of the satellite and then they uploaded malware to all of the networked devices that got internet access through that satellite. So I think we'll see something like that in 2025. We saw that in 2022, and I think that's just beginning to be accepted as a legitimate threat to our communication system, because the satellites are a key element of all of our communication systems, whether it be television or radio or military or internet access. Those are all communication services, and satellites are critical to it. And so they are likely to be attacked more and more as part of an attempt to cripple a nation or a company.
I agree. And we did a video on satellite hacking, so I will also leave the link in the description and the thumbnail on the screen, so anyone that is interested can look into it.
And finally, okay, my last prediction, and I think this one has a good chance of being true. Maybe the other ones will not be true, but I'm pretty sure this one's going to be true. And that is that artificial intelligence will play a bigger role in cybersecurity. I can make that prediction and be almost 100%.
I believe you.
We're going to see it come and play a role in both offense and defense, right? So we're going to see malware developed by AI, and we're already seeing this. Okay, this is already happening, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to see better cybersecurity devices with AI built into them. They have AI that's going to help in detect threats. Right? So we're going to get new threats coming from the offensive side, the attackers, and we're going to have new defenses coming from the defenders. Right? We're going to see AI built into all of our defensive devices, all of our endpoint security devices. They are all going to have AI built into them. And this might be one of the very first widely used AI application, because there's a lot of money at stake, and AI can do this job pretty well, right? AI is still, we're starting to see malware developed by AI, but defending networks and identifying malware and identifying malicious traffic is something that AI is almost perfect for, I think. So if a device is not using AI in it, it's probably going to be obsolete in a year or two. Right. That doesn't mean that cybersecurity engineers are going to be obsolete in a year or two, but these devices are going to get smarter and smarter. And all of you out there who want a career in cybersecurity or already have a career in cybersecurity, I don't think I have to tell you twice, but AI is here to stay. and AI is part of your future. AI will only put you out of work if you don't embrace it and learn how to use it. If you learn how to use it, it'll make you better, faster, and more efficient as a cybersecurity engineer. If you don't, you're going to be history. You're not going to be around. You're going to be out of a job soon. So don't go into this saying, oh my God, all the jobs are going to be gone because AI is going to take all the jobs. No, it will only take the jobs of those people who don't use AI. And with that, those are my bold predictions for 2025. I think the last one has the greatest chance of being true.
I think there is a pretty much high probability that everything, but definitely AI. I like what you're saying. When you invent technology, you cannot uninvent it, right?
Right.
I fully agree. The attackers are using AI, and now the defenders needs to use the same fire against fire, right?
Exactly.
Otherwise, definitely they will lose the war. So we talked about, you mentioned ransomware, you mentioned SS7, you mentioned SCADA, DDoS, attacks on the VPNs, IoT, satellite attacks on the satellites, and definitely AI. We do see the threat landscape is changing dramatically. There are many reasons. We spoke about some of the geopolitical reasons, the technology adoption and innovation. So definitely it's getting more sophisticated, getting more frequent, and getting more larger in terms of the impact.
It's going to be good for people who are well trained in cybersecurity. I mean, everything's becoming digital. Everything is becoming digital. Right? Not everything is digital, but it's becoming digital. As everything becomes more and more digital, right? And then that means that there's more incentive for the attackers. It means also that there's a greater attack surface, I guess is probably the best way to put it. More devices means a greater attack surface. And as greater the attack surface, the more attacks you're going to see. And so for those people who understand these technologies and these defense strategies and attack strategies, there's going to be a good living out there for you folks. You're going to have an exciting career, and you're going to make a lot of money. but you have to be prepared.
Definitely. So health, happiness, and lots of success. With that said, Master Hacker, Occupy the Web, thank you very much. Again, insightful video. If you like such content, check out my other videos with Occupy the Web. There are more than 20 now, definitely in different permutation subject. And Occupy the Web, I wish you a very happy, successful 2025. And we'll check all of your prediction January 1st, 2026. So let's see.
That'll be fun. I look forward to that. So Happy New Year to you and to all of your viewers. I hope you have a very prosperous and successful 2025.
Thank you very much. And with that said, guys, see you in the next video.